But yeah, let's stick with the one on F. So let me do this in some different inversions. We'll put the 3 at the top. C major 9, A minor 9, F major 9, and then G sus. Resolve the 3. Talk about that another time. Let's put it here. Yeah, I quite like that one. And then what are we putting here? Yeah. And then hello and welcome to the Heart of the Piano YouTube channel. I'm Bob Rose. Today we're going to be looking at how to play pop music, basically. So, you know, most of the time I do classical tutorials or I do jazz tutorials. We've been looking a little bit at the jazz piano book. I will be coming back to that soon. I know some of you have been requesting that. But there's not an awful lot written about how to play over pop music. And as it happens, I've got some gigs coming up accompanying a singer playing a lot of quite simple pop tunes. So I thought this would be an opportunity for me to teach what do you do when you're playing pop. And, you know, for most of my life, this is something that I haven't done it a huge amount, but it's something I just kind of do instinctively. It helps that I play rock, pop, jazz, metal, electric guitar. But with piano, I thought, let's have a look at some people's resources and see what they say. A really useful one is a book called R&B Keyboard by Mark Harrison. And this is one of a whole set of books by Leonard, which looks at different styles of music. You know, there's jazz, there's bebop, there's you know, whole loads of different kinds of stuff, gospel. And all these different books, they've got a lot of issues, a lot of problems, but there's some useful things that we can dig out from them. So, you know, look at this tutorial maybe a little bit as a review of the R&B Keyboard Book by Mark Harrison. I'm only going to dig into a really tiny bit of this book today and really sort of dig out different bits from this book over the next few tutorials, hopefully. So what I'm going to be looking at today is something that it starts with what they call triad over root chord voicings, which is really like sort of upper triad extensions. I'm not going to talk about that too much. But anyway, the book starts with a dizzying amount of you need to know this, you need to know that, you need to know these scales, you need to know these modes, you need to know, and this is quite useful, you kind of need to know your basic triad shapes, your seventh chord shapes, all their inversions. So for example, C major triad root, first inversion, second inversion, and so on, and then minor in their inversions, diminished inversions, and so on and so on. This is incredibly useful. This is not really a tutorial for beginners. This is for people who already kind of understand some basic theory, know their triads and all their different inversions and can play them. If you're not sure, just keep watching and see what it's like. And if it's going too far for you, leave a comment saying what videos you'd like some help with. But to start in page 13, page 13 of this R&B keyboard, this is a really useful place to start because the thing with pop music, we could just say, let's say that we've got a 1, 6, 4, 5, 1 progression. So in the key of C, that would be like C major. What did I say? 6, A minor, F major, G major, back to C. So, you know, we could just play all in root. And really here, this is stuff that I'm assuming you kind of already know. So either we can play like that, which is pretty basic, or we can do what people call good voice leading, where let's say from the C, if we want to get to the A minor, we stay as much as possible where we are. So instead of jumping all the way up here, we keep 2 of the notes the same in the right hand and just go there. And then moving to the 4, we keep 2 of those notes the same and go there. And then move to the nearest possible place for the G. So, as opposed to, And this is just something that I'm assuming most people are going to know at this stage. And if you don't know this at this stage and you'd like help with this, leave me a comment and I'll think about doing some tutorials, because this is really useful stuff to know for a beginner. And I do teach this to all my beginners who want to learn pop music. It's absolutely vital. Voice leading, this kind of staying in the same kind of part of the piano, it's absolutely essential. Anyway, so let's say that we want to play pop music and the chords are C major, A minor, F major, G major or G dominant 7. Most people, and most people from a classical background, but just most people in general, will just be stuck in a which is not that interesting. So by the way, this tutorial is also going to be really, really useful for you if you want to play with a band, because if you're playing with a band, all this kind of way of playing, it's a bit boring, it's a bit dull. So immediately, this R&B book is so useful because it's a way of making more polished, more like what you'd hear on actual pop or R&B or neo soul, or neo soul is covered a little bit in this book, by the way. Incredibly popular style of music. Anyhow, so page 13, and I'll also show bits of this in the corner. They suggest different ways about thinking, playing your right hand over a major chord. So say you've got a C major chord, well, we can either just play triads of C major over the top. That's really boring. What happens if we play from the third, which is E? The third of C is E. If we play from there, we play a minor triad based on there, we actually get a C major 7. I'm going to come a little bit more to, do we want to think about this as an upper voicing triad of upper extension triad of E minor, or do we really just want to think of this as C major 7? I'm going to come to this in a minute, but for the moment, let's do what the book suggests and think in our right hand we're playing E minor triad, which is based on the third scale degree of C. So C, 1, 2, 3, E, we place a triad on that, E minor, and then we can play all the different triads there. That immediately gives us a more interesting sound, and that is basically C major 7. It also suggests that if we start on the 5th scale degree, which is G, and play that major triad, we can play that. Now I'm going to suggest to you that for the moment, this is not a useful one to think about. This is useful in a different part of the book, and I'll cover that in a different tutorial. Starting on the 5th, for the moment, I don't think that's a useful one. The same goes for the 4th one, which is if we start on the 2nd scale degree, which here is D, and we play a major triad, we end up having a sharp 11 or a sharp 4. Again, for the purposes of this tutorial, this one is not going to be so useful. So here, what we're concerned with is the C major over C, and the E minor, which is basically a minor triad based on the 3rd, over the C, which basically just gives us a C major triad. Then, if we move to the next bit where it talks about what we can put over minor triads, over minor chords, we can just have C minor over C. We can again build a triad from the 3rd. Here the 3rd is a flat 3rd, it's E flat. If we build a major triad from the 3rd, we have an E flat major triad over the C, which gives us C minor 7. Again, I'm assuming that you know your major, minor, dominant 7s. Otherwise, you're going to need to watch a different tutorial, or let me know in the comments and I'll make a tutorial for all of this stuff. And by the way, there is, I think, as part of this selection of books, there is like a pop music or R&B for beginners, and at some point I will go through that as well and really take it right back to beginners for people who are relatively new. Incredibly useful stuff, but this is just a little bit more advanced. Anyway, so E flat over C, it's basically a C minor 7. We can go through all the different inversions here. And also quite useful if we want to play a C half diminished. So half diminished is like a diminished triad and a minor 7th. This is quite useful when you're playing minor 2-5-1s. Again, a bit more advanced. I'm not going to go into it too much. But what it suggests, if you want to play here, and it actually says if you want to play it in the key of D, so a half diminished chord in the key of D is going to be D, F, A flat, C. That is a D half diminished. We can also think of that as an F minor triad over D, which is basically building a minor triad over the third of the D, which is the F. I'm going a little bit quickly here, but don't worry too much. Basically, a lot of people think of the half diminished as a kind of minor chord, because we can also call it a minor 7 flat 5. Minor 7 flat 5 and half diminished are the same thing. So if you take the minor third from the D, which is F, and you build a minor triad on it, it gives you the D half diminished, which is useful because you can also then just, your hand can feel all the different inversions of it quite easily. So, and then for dominance, and here I think it misses out a lot of information, and I'm going to give you more information about these dominants later on. Now we can play, we can think about a dominant 7th. So here it gives you the G. So we're going to be playing G dominant 7ths, which is basically G, B, D, and F. We could just think of this as an upper extension triad of B, D, and F, which is a B diminished triad over G. And I really don't know why anyone would want to think about it that way, because that's just an awkward, to me, well, anyway. You can think about it this way, and that's what the book recommends. It's a B diminished triad built on the 3rd scale degree of G, which gives you that. Or if you build a minor triad based on the 6th scale degree, which is E, or you can think of it, I prefer to think of the 6th scale degree in the dominant, or the 13th or the 6th. Again, if I'm going too fast, don't worry. You don't need to know about 13ths and all this kind of stuff. But if you want to know where the 6th is quickly, you need to know where the 7th is in the dominant. And the easiest way to know where the flat 7th in the dominant is, so in G, B, D, F, the F is the flat 7. Rather than go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all the way up that way, it's excuse me, it's so much easier to just go to the 1 an octave higher and go down 2 semitones, or 2 half steps if you're from America. 2 half steps, 2 semitones from the 1. That is your flat 7. And I can't tell you how much I nag my students that every time I say flat 7, don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and go all the way up that way, because you'll probably keep getting it wrong. Just think to the next 1 and go down 2 semitones or 2 half steps. That's where your flat 7 is. And then to get to your 6 or your 13, but don't worry if you don't know about 13ths, to get to your 6, just go down another semitone or another half step. That's how you get to your 6. Anyway, I'm really trying to squeeze a lot in here. So if we go from that 6 and build a minor triad, and we also play the flat 7 in the left hand. So again, don't just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Play an octave and go down 2 semitones or 2 half steps. That's what you do in the left hand. In the right hand, you go down another semitone or half step from that flat 7 and you play a minor triad. That gives you a G dominant 13th, and don't worry if you don't know what 13ths are, just don't worry about it. But this is kind of a useful voicing, a useful chord. Or we can build it from the flat 7 by building a major triad from the flat 7. And this gives you basically a sus sound. And sus means there is no third. So if I play the F triad over G, you notice that there is no third. The third of G is B. There is no third in there. So I'm going to try not to follow all the rabbit holes of these things and just keep it relatively simple, although in a way it's kind of too late. I've already gone down a few rabbit holes. Anyhow, so it then gives us an example in this book of what we can do with a sample chord progression without the major 7, minor 7, and here we have a dominant 11. Don't worry about that. But let's just say that the chord progression, we could just think about it as F, E minor, A minor, F major, E minor, and C. And we could play the C as a dominant 7 because it takes us to F. C is the dominant of F. Dominant just means 5th scale degree. C is the dominant of F, and if we want to turn into 7th chord, it is a dominant 7th. So that's what it would sound like. 2, 3, 4, E minor, A minor, F major, E minor, and C. So if you were reading a chord chart, it would probably just say that. Now, you can then make it a little bit more interesting with what they've suggested, which is here we've taken the 3rd scale degree of F, built a triad on that. We now have F major 7, and to get the E minor 7, we've built the major, sorry, what did I say before? To get the F major 7 in the previous bar was a minor triad. I might have said major, sorry about that. So the first chord is a minor triad built on the 3rd. Then to get the next one, E minor 7, we have G major built on the 3rd scale degree, which is G. And then for A minor 7, we're building it again. The 3rd scale degree of A is C. We're building a major triad, but playing it in a different inversion, which gives us good voice leading. So we've got this one here, then E minor, A minor 7, which is really a C triad. Then we start again, and then we do the same thing. And then when we get to the C dominant 7, we're basically building a triad, a major triad on the flat 7 of C, which is, we go down 2 semitones or 2 half steps, that's B flat, and we build it there. That's a lovely sounding chord. So if I play the whole thing through, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm just extemporizing on it, just sort of making it a bit more interesting. So I'm not just sat here for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, hopefully you can see that that's kind of interesting. And to illustrate this further, I fired up ChatGPT earlier to give me some chord progressions. So it's given me 3 chord progressions. I'll just do this briefly with one of them. This one is supposed to be a bright and upbeat progression, apparently. So bear in mind, this is not the way I normally think about these things in upper structure triads. That was the word I was looking for, upper structure triads. It's not the way I normally do it. But I'm going to do it here. The chord progression is D major, A major, B minor, G major, D major, A major, B minor, G major. And as always, we're in the key of D. So every time that I see the dominant, an A, I'm really going to think about that really being as a D, an A. Sorry, we're in the key of D. The dominant is A. So every time I see an A major, it's really an A dominant 7th. That's how I'm seeing it. So let's just go through this progression. Instead of D, we can think about this as building the triad over the 3rd, which is an F sharp minor. So we can play it like this. The A is the dominant, so I can play a G. For B minor, I'm building an D major upper structure triad. For G, I'm building the triad based on the 3rd, which is going to be on B, which gives us this. So what I'm playing in the right hand is an inversion of B minor. And where have I got to? I've got to G. So back to D. This is F sharp minor upper extension triad. Really confuses me thinking about it this way, but I'll continue. And then the same as before. For the A, I'm going to play a G triad at the top. B minor, I think we had this before, and I'm building a D major in the right hand. And then for G, I'm building a B minor. So, which sounds quite nice. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that there's a much better way about thinking this, which is that what we're basically trying to do in the right hand is to play seventh chords, leaving out the root. So if I go back to the book, and if I look again where it was talking about the major chords, so its example was to play an E minor over C. Now, to me, it's just so much easier, rather than thinking about, oh, I'm building an upper structure triad built on the third, which is minor, over the C. All I'm playing, I'm turning the C major triad, I'm turning it into a C major 7. And in my right hand, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm playing C major 7 without the root. And then my hand will naturally then get all these other triad shapes because I just know my triad shapes. But I'm not thinking E minor, I'm just thinking this shape. Like whatever note I have on the top, if I've got the third on the top and I want to play a C major 7, I could play it with the C, but I just leave the C out. And that achieves the same thing. That achieves the same thing as the upper structure triad based on the third. That's way too much thinking for me. I just play a major 7th in my right hand without the root. So if I go up again another inversion, I could play that with the C, but I don't. I just leave the C out. And to me, that is a C major 7 triad without the root, C major 7 triad without the root, C major 7 triad without the root. For me, that is so much easier. But let me know in the comments, do you prefer just thinking E minor triads in the inversions, or like me, do you prefer C major 7 without the root, C major 7 without the root, C major 7 without the root? I prefer that. It's just so much easier. So the same thing again with the minor ones. Again, rather than just building a major triad built on the flat third to get your C minor 7, I'm just playing a minor 7 in my right hand without the root, minor 7 in the right hand without the root, minor 7 in the right hand without the root. So much easier. Same thing again for the half diminished. If I'm playing it in D, I'm just playing a D half diminished without the root. It's just so much easier that way. Although to be fair, it actually is a little bit useful to think about when you're playing a half diminished, playing a minor triad based on the third scale degree, because something that I do, and here I really am jumping ahead, do not worry if this goes completely over your head, but if I want to know how to solo over a D half diminished, one thing I can do, and this is by far the easiest way for me to think about this, is to solo using an F melodic minor. So it's basically using the melodic minor built on the third of the D half diminished. So D half diminished, if I played then the F melodic minor, and that is something that I actually do use. But do not worry if I've just suddenly leapt ahead with that. I'm just whetting your appetite with more advanced stuff. But anyhow, so, and then when it comes to dominant sus chords and sus chords in general, I actually do think that here it's easier using upper structure triads. So here it is easier with G to think of an E minor, or certainly of an F. The F/G is really common way of writing things. By the way, when it says F/G, the slash, what it means is the thing before the slash, that is what we're playing in the right hand, and after the slash is the note at the bottom. That's the note, the root. So if we now look at, again, their example, looking at it this way, and it says F major 7, well, I'm just playing an F major 7 in my right hand without the root. E minor is just an E minor without the root. And this is so much easier for me to think this way. And then here, yes, I am thinking I go to the flat 7 and build that over the root. And then this is much easier to me. Let's take a different inversion. So rather than putting the E at the top, let's put the 5 at the top here. So we've got C at the top. And then here it's just so much easier. I'm just thinking to myself, F major without the root in the right hand. And then for E minor 7, I'm thinking the E minor 7 without the root. A minor 7 without the roots, which means I'm going to have to go up to the 3 in the right hand. And then here, yeah. So hopefully you can see this is, and it makes everything sound so good. You know, instantly I can just move my way around all these different chords. It already sounds like someone who knows what they're playing doing pop music. And, you know, depending on what you're doing with the left hand, like same chord progression, let's see. Yeah, I went to a simple one there because I wanted the A in the right hand, but let's say I go here. So let me do that again. You know, and so on and so on. So looking again, in fact, no, let's just move on to the next part of the book. So the next part of the book, if you ignore all the other stuff in the meantime, it does talk about a whole load of other stuff. It's really, really useful. But the most useful thing for me is actually then using upper structure 7th chords in the right hand with the aim now of building 9th chords. So I'm not going to really talk too much at the moment about why we use numbers above 8. Let me just get to the right page. Here we go. So I'm on page 22 now, where it talks about 4-part over root chord voicings. So basically, when you have numbers above 8, you just want to think all the time 9 equals 2, 11 equals 4, 13 equals 6. Just write that down, have that in front of you. Every time you see the number 9, it's really just the number 2. So, and I'm not going to try not to talk any more about that for the moment. So if we want to play, let's say before we were playing a C major 7. If we want to play the major 9, it's like the major 7th, but with the 2 as well. So it could be that. It's like basically we're playing the major 7, but we're adding the 2. That is now like a major 9. So what it says here, if we, on page 22, it was page 22, wasn't that? Yeah. If we want to play over a C, a major 7 chord, if we play a minor 7 upper structure 7th chord, and again, I'm going to simplify this in a minute. I think this is way too complicated, but we can think about this as the 7th chord built on the 3rd scale degree of C. That then gives us the major 7th and the 9th or the 2nd. And if we know our 7th chord shapes, it makes it kind of easier to have all these different voicings. So here it shows us all the different voicings for having the C major 9 sound. It then also says to us that if we've got a C minor 7, we can think about this as playing a 7th chord shape over the C minor, which is basically an E flat major 7 shape. And again, I'm going to simplify this because to me this is just too complicated. So basically what it's saying is if you want to play a major 9th, over if you're playing a C major, you go to the 3rd scale degree and you play a minor 7 shape to get your major 9th. This is so complicated. My brain is spinning trying to explain this. I'm going to simplify this for you in a minute. Or if you want to play a minor sound over C, you can go to the 3rd scale degree, which is going to be the flat 3, which is going to be E flat, and you can play a major 7 shape over that, which gives you your minor 9 sound. Again, this is way too complicated. My head spins trying to think of this. I can't possibly do this on the fly. It's way too complicated. That's the way it explains it in this book. I don't recommend that. So let me know if you prefer it this way. But anyway, so here, and we've got all our different inversions. So it lists this one, it gives you this one, it gives you this one, and so on and so on. So, and then it gives you some options. Now for if we're playing the G dominant 7, it says that we can build a seventh built on the 5th scale degree. So it's like thinking about a D minor 7 shape over G. And what this gives you, it gives you a sus sound because you don't have the third. The 3rd scale degree of G is B. There is no 3 here. What you actually have, let's say that we're looking at their example of D minor 7 over G, and we take this one with the root in the right hand, the root chord. What we have is the 5th scale degree, the flat 7, the 2, and the 4. And then you've got all your different inversions of that. Or it suggests that you can build it up from the flat 7, and then you can play the major 7. And then if I play that here, that gives you a scale degrees. Again, it's a sus sound because you don't have the 3. The scale degrees you have here is the flat 7, the 2, the 4, and the 6 or the 13. Again, 13 equals 6. You can just think of that as the 6 if you want. And here it is actually useful to go to the flat 7 and build the major 7. That saves me a little bit of thinking. There it's useful. Do not worry if I'm losing you in some of this. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you don't keep up with every single bit of this. And if you want, you can go back, you can rewind, you can look at particular bits over and over, but just keep watching and see if it makes sense when I actually then get to the examples. So here what you've got, and also I'm about to explain it to me in a way that makes more sense to me. Now their example here is A major 9. So here, and again, this is dizzyingly complicated, the way that they've done it. So what they've done, the way they explain it, is if we go to the 3rd scale degree of A and we build the 7th chord on it, it gives us C sharp minor 7, and then they give you this inversion of it. And then for G minor 9, this inversion here is quite handy because it's basically the major 7 built on the 3rd of G, which gives you this voicing. And so basically what you have, and if I go back one, this A major 9, you've basically, like if I explain it like I did before, you've got your major 7, this is the major 7, and then you just add the 9th. I'm almost giving away how I think about this there. So anyway, that's your major 9. Then already talked a little bit about the G minor 9. It's basically the 7th built on the 3rd. And then here, and then for the C9, what they've done here, and I actually left out earlier on, they did have an example of how you build dominant 7s by using a half diminished. But I just think this is such a needlessly complicated way of thinking about it. What they've basically done, and oh my God, this is too complicated. Why would you do this? What they've done, from C to get a C dominant 9, they've built a half diminished chord in the right hand, or a minor 7 flat 5 for people who think about it that way. I prefer half diminished. They've built a half diminished. So here is an E half diminished in the right hand. You put it on top of C, and then you get the inversion that gives you this C dominant 9. Oh my God, that's just way too complicated. For me, like, I'm just playing a C dominant 7th without the root, and I'm adding the 9. Because, like, to build a half diminished and get that's just too complicated. I'm sorry, too complicated. So anyway, that's how they get that. And then for the F major 9, what they've done is they've built a 7th chord on the 3rd. And I'm just going to even stop explaining it that way, because as you may have guessed, the way that I think about all of these, and I'm just going to rewind to where they explain all of these, to get an a C major 7. So here, instead of thinking about this as an E minor 7, oh my God, just play a C major 7 and then just add a 9 without the root. This is a C major 7 without the root. And then just add a 9, just add a 2. You can either add it at the top or you can add it at the bottom. And then here it's where it's kind of useful to know your 7th shapes, because then you can just use your intuition to take you through all those different shapes. But But I don't think first, oh, I have to build the seventh from the third. No, just play the major 7 shape without the root and just add a 2. It's just so much easier that way. Same thing with the thinking about the C minor. Play a C minor 7 without a root and just add a 2. And then you can use your hands' muscle memory to take you through all those different shapes. The dominant ones are just a little bit more complicated. So for the moment, I would use the upper structure way of thinking about it. So if we now go back to their example, A major 9 is just an A major 7 shape without the root. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. And then we can add a 9 at the top, or we can add it at the bottom. They happen to have added it at the bottom. And now if we want good voice leading, now here, this would be where the minor 7 goes, but then the 2 goes at the top. And then, oh my God, here it's just so much easier to just think about a C dominant 7 without the root, and then just add the 2. If we want it as a sus, then I could play a major 7 shape from the B flat, and that's quite nice. So this is a B flat major 7 shape. Now if I play from the beginning what they've got, and then here, instead of going to the dominant they've recommended, I could basically then play the major 7 shape from the B flat, which is staying, it's exactly the same chord as what we've just changed. And I would go here, but I'm gonna talk about that later, because that's the thing that I think was missing from this book, but I'm going to come to that in a minute. Or maybe even put that in a different tutorial. Do you know what? I'm going to put that in a different tutorial leading on from this, if you guys want it. Because this is what, I mean, you hear, that's something that I would hear in pop all the time. They don't cover in this book. I want to hear it. I'm going to put it in a tutorial after this of basically just, making your dominant sound a little bit more interesting. So then we get to the F major 9, which is basically just an F major 7 with the 2 on top, because that's good voice leading. And then for the B minor 9, we have, this is just the B minor 7 without the root, and then I'm just adding the 2 there. And then here, this is where they are building, which one is that based on? That's basically the dominant, that's basically a 7th in the right hand. It's so complicated to think of it this way. This is the 7th in the right hand built on the 5th scale degree. And what it gives you is it gives you the 5th scale degree, the flat 7, the 2 and the 4. And then I like that to resolve to the 3, which they haven't put here. If I now do this with the chord sequence that ChatGPT has given to me, so it's given me the bright and upbeat progression. So starting with D, similar to what we were doing before. So we're playing a D major 7 without the root, but this time I'm going to add the 2 or the 9. Now if we go to the dominant, let's build the 7th from the flat 7 there, and then I'm just going to amend here to go there, which is something I'm going to cover in the next tutorial. And then keeping good voice leading, we want to keep the F sharp on top. It's basically the minor 7 without the root, but adding the 2. And then let's go to the G, and the G here will keep the F sharp on top, and it's going to be like the major 7 shape, but adding the 2 at the bottom. So if I do that again, but without all the talking and illustrating everything, we've got D major 9. We've got G7 sus, resolve the 3. We've got B minor 9. Let's come back then to the D major. And then we're again to the A7 sus. Again, B minor 9. And then here, a G major 9. That's lovely. So that's built by, we have our G major 7 without a root, and we just add the 2 at the bottom. So I know that I've gone fairly quickly through all of that. So yeah, I was going to finish it there, but let's just apply this to a really bulk standard, very common progression like a 1, 6, 4, 5. So, you know, like up until now, a lot of people would just be like A minor, F major, G major, or G dominant 7. So we can now, let's put the G on the top. We can have a C major 9. And then here we can have an A minor 9. An F major 9. And then here we can have a G sus. Maybe have a slightly better inversion of it. Or we could go for the one built on the 5th, which is going to be but yeah, let's stick with the one on F. So let me do this in some different inversions. We'll put the 3 at the top, C major 9, A minor 9, F major 9, and then G sus. Resolve the 3. Talk about that another time. Let's put it here. Yeah, I quite like that one. And then, well, what are we putting here? Yeah. And then so hopefully you can see why this is useful. Now, if I'm thinking maybe I tried to do too much in this tutorial. If I did, let me know. Let me know if you want me to simplify this down and do it bit by bit. But I'm finding this incredibly useful for what I'm doing, preparing for my gig, basically accompanying a pop singer, because this is stuff that, you know, basically I've done pretty intuitively and instinctively all my life. But it's actually quite useful to think to myself consciously, oh yeah, just go for voicings in the right hand that don't have the root, that have the 7th and the 9th. So anyway, to be continued, and I think that I'm going to probably do quite a few more tutorials where I'm looking at playing pop music rather than, you know, advanced jazz, advanced classical, all that kind of stuff. And I will come to the next chapter of the jazz piano book. So anyway, do let me know what you thought. Even if you didn't enjoy this, it's always useful to have feedback, or let me know if this was useful and enjoyable. As always, do please support the channel by pressing like, pressing subscribe, clicking the bell icon if you want to be notified about more tutorials like this, and go do some practice or watch more of my videos, and I'll see you at the next one. Have a good one. Take care. Bye.